My son can't breathe. Olivia screamed the words, the sound tearing through the harsh silence as she slammed through the sliding doors of Los Angeles Mercy General Hospital. Her twins were clinging to her, one utterly limp and blue-tinged in her arms, the other sobbing uncontrollably beside her. The ruthless fluorescent lights of the emergency room streaked and blurred as she stumbled forward, her voice fracturing under the sheer weight of panic. A figure in blue scrubs, a doctor, sprinted toward them, his identification badge swinging wildly, his gloved hands already reaching out for the child. Give him to me now. His voice was not loud, but it was sharp, intensely controlled, and utterly commanding. Olivia froze in the middle of the brightly lit chaos. Her heart plummeted into her stomach, and a deep, terrifying chill washed over her. She knew that voice. She knew that face. She had seen him only once, 5 catastrophic years ago, on the night that had irrevocably altered the trajectory of her life. But he did not look at her. Not yet. He was too engrossed, too focused on the small boy struggling desperately for air, the tiny chest barely managing to rise. Crash cart. Trauma room 3 now. The doctor roared the command. Nurses materialized from every direction, moving with practiced speed. Her other son, Ethan, clung fiercely to her leg, his small body shaking. Mommy, is he dying? Olivia couldn't force an answer past the rigid lump in her throat. Her pulse hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The world tilted and spun violently as the doctor vanished behind the heavy double doors with her precious son. The doors slammed shut with a definitive, chilling sound, and with that single sound, her past slammed terrifyingly open. She had dedicated 5 grueling years to burying his memory. 5 years meticulously raising their twins completely alone. Twins he never even suspected existed. 5 years spent idly wondering if he ever spared a thought for her existence at all. And now, he was the only human being capable of saving her child's life. The one person she prayed desperately would remember her name, and simultaneously the one person she truly feared would. A calm nurse gently but firmly blocked her path as she tried to follow. Ma'am, please, you have to wait out here. He's doing absolutely everything he can for your son. Olivia hugged her remaining son tight, her knees trembling so badly she could barely stand. The sterile waiting room hummed with a dizzying fluorescent silence as her mind plummeted into a dangerous spiral. What if he recognized her instantly? What if he didn't, and treated her son just as another case? What if her little boy didn't make it back? Minutes stretched out, feeling impossibly long, like excruciating hours. Ethan, still holding her leg, whispered, "Mommy? Who was that doctor?" Olivia swallowed around the dryness in her mouth. She wasn't ready to tell him the truth. Not yet, but she could feel it coming, inevitable and crushing, like the wave of fate that brought her to him 5 years earlier. In just a few moments, when those trauma doors finally swung open again, her entire life, the careful structure she had built, would change forever. The weak morning sunlight eventually crept through the thin, dusty blinds of Olivia Carter's tiny Los Angeles apartment, painting faint, parallel golden lines across the worn kitchen linoleum. She stood mechanically at the stove, stirring the thick oatmeal, her movements automatic, her consciousness still trapped in the vivid nightmare from just a few hours prior. The image of her son choking for breath played relentlessly on a loop in her mind. "Mom!" She turned abruptly. Her son, Ethan, sat quietly at the small, chipped wooden table next to his twin brother, Aiden, his spoon frozen midair above his bowl. He stared up at her with large, warm brown eyes that were an exact, heartbreaking match for the doctor in the emergency room. "Why don't we have a dad like the other kids in school?" The question landed squarely, hitting her heart like a physical blow to the chest. Olivia blinked slowly, forcing her voice to remain outwardly steady, refusing to let it waver. "Your dad lives very far away," she said softly, crafting the familiar lie. "He doesn't know about you too." Aiden, who was absorbed in coloring a picture with a bright purple crayon, looked up, a puzzled crease forming between his eyebrows. How can he not know? Olivia instantly turned back to the stove. She had provided this exact answer countless times before, but somehow each repetition caused the same sharp ache. Sometimes grown-ups lose touch, she explained, her voice carefully neutral. That's simply all. It was a lie, obviously, or perhaps, more accurately, a necessary half-truth. Either way, it was infinitely easier to tell than the entire, complicated story. The full story involved a whirlwind night in Seattle, a fast-paced medical conference, an unexpected connection that had consumed her, and a morning she could never erase from her memory. A phone number that abruptly stopped working, a man who seemed to vanish completely into the high-stakes world of medicine. She poured the oatmeal into 2 small, unmatched bowls and set them down on the table. Eat up. We are running terribly late today. The twins ate in unusual silence. Ethan swung his small legs beneath the table, the 2 oversized socks on his feet slipping further down his ankles. Aiden hummed a tune under his breath as he colored, filling the paper with swirling, energetic shapes. Olivia sipped her cooling coffee, watching them intently. These 2 perfect, small human beings carried distinct, unmistakable pieces of a man who remained entirely oblivious to their existence. His dark, precise curls, his warm, intense brown eyes, his determined, stubborn chin. Every single day, she saw him reflected in them. And every day it usually hurt just a little less. Until last night when she looked up and saw him again. Not a hazy memory, not a haunting ghost of the past, but real, solid, alive and standing directly in front of her. She shivered involuntarily, forcing herself back to the present moment. Okay, kids, time to get dressed now. But as they hopped down from their chairs and ran toward their tiny bedroom, Ethan paused dramatically at the doorway. Mom, he asked quietly, if Daddy lives so far away, do you think he'll ever come find us? Olivia manufactured a brittle smile, trying to keep the terror out of her expression. I don't know, sweetheart, but the chilling truth resonated deep within her heart. Asterisk, you already have. Olivia helped Aiden slip his legs into his jeans while Ethan wrestled a losing battle with the sticky zipper of his jacket. Morning chaos was a default setting in the cramped Los Angeles apartment. Lost shoes, messy hair, spilled cereal, minor arguments. But today felt significantly heavier. The shadow of the ER panic still clung to her, cold and immediate. She tied Ethan's sneakers, her fingers moving quickly from years of practiced necessity. Hold still, buddy. I am holding still, he protested, wobbling precariously. Aiden stood proudly in front of the cracked mirror. Mommy, do I look okay for school? You look absolutely perfect, Olivia said, tenderly brushing down a loose, dark curl. They hurried down the narrow, squeaking stairwell to Olivia's aging Toyota Corolla. The paint was chipped, the engine was notoriously loud, the heater was perpetually unreliable, but critically, it ran. And that, she knew, was the absolute limit of what she could afford. She buckled both boys securely into their seats, kissed their foreheads, and drove toward Bright Steps Daycare in the Silver Lake neighborhood. Traffic already crawled, horns blared aggressively, and Ethan kept asking anxiously if the doctor from last night would be there again. No, baby, she said quietly, trying to reassure him. He works at a different hospital, in a different life, a different world, one I never belonged to. After dropping the twins off, Olivia drove across town to St. Andrew's Medical Center, where she worked grueling, long shifts as an RN. 12 solid hours on her feet, 12 hours answering call lights, administering medications, gently soothing anxious families, and charting until her hands threatened to cramp. Morning, Liv. Her coworker Jenna greeted her as they passed in the brightly lit hallway. You look utterly exhausted. I'm fine, Olivia replied automatically, the practiced lie slipping out effortlessly. She always said that, whether she was behind on the rent, desperately behind on sleep, or simply behind on hope, it didn't matter. She managed. She always somehow managed. During her very short lunch break, she sat completely alone in the echoing cafeteria with a dry sandwich she could barely force herself to taste. Bills relentlessly filled her thoughts. Rent, astronomical daycare fees, medical costs, groceries, and now, the terrifying looming specter of hospital debt from last night's emergency. Her chest tightened painfully. How much exactly would Ethan's urgent treatment cost this time? Could she possibly handle this immense weight alone again? When her shift finally ended at 7 p.m., she drove straight back to the daycare. The moment she walked through the door, two small, excited bodies launched themselves into her waiting arms. "Mommy," Ethan cried, burying his face in her neck. "You came back," Aiden said simply. Olivia hugged them fiercely, inhaling the sweet, comforting scent of crayons and graham crackers. "I'll always come back," she whispered into their hair. But deep down, a new, sharp fear lingered because, after last night, everything was irrevocably changing. And the man who had been unknowingly missing from their lives for half a decade was now, suddenly and dangerously, back in hers. It was precisely 2 a.m. when Olivia jolted abruptly awake, her heart instantly hammering against her sternum. A sound sharp, horribly strangled, unnatural, echoed down the dark hallway. "Mom! Mom!" It was Ethan. Olivia shot out of bed and sprinted blindly toward the twins' room. She flipped on the overhead light and her breath instantly seized in her throat. Ethan sat rigidly upright in bed, his small hands desperately clawing at his throat, his brown eyes bulging wide with unadulterated terror. No air, no sound, only a desperate, wet, choking wheeze. His lips were beginning to turn a dangerous shade of blue. "Aiden, wake up!" Olivia shouted, scooping her son into her arms. Aiden sat up, wide-eyed and terrified, clutching his blanket to his chest. "Mommy, what's wrong with him? Why is he making that terrible sound?" Olivia couldn't answer him. She physically couldn't speak. Panic surged violently through her veins as she wrapped Ethan tightly in a blanket and grabbed Aiden's small hand. "It's okay, baby. We are going to the hospital right now." They tore down the narrow stairs. Olivia's bare feet slapped wetly against the cold concrete floor. Ethan's tiny chest barely moved. Aiden sobbed uncontrollably beside her. They reached the car. Olivia wrenched the back door open and laid Ethan down flat, not wasting a single precious second fumbling with seat belts, not caring about anything except air. Ethan needed air instantly. Aiden scrambled in, trembling. "Mommy, is he going to die?" "No," Olivia insisted, even though a part of her soul feared that exact truth. "Hold his hand, Aiden. Talk to him. Keep him awake." She sped recklessly through the sleeping streets of Los Angeles, blowing through red lights, ignoring the angry, sustained honk of a truck she violently cut off. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles blanched white. "Stay with me, Ethan," she whispered, her voice fracturing. "Please, baby, stay with me." The hospital was typically a 10-minute drive. She made it in 6. She screeched into the emergency room entrance, jumped out instantly, and yanked Ethan into her arms. "Help! Please! Someone help me! My son cannot breathe." The automatic doors slammed open immediately. Nurses turned instantly. A security guard took a single step forward, and then a familiar figure in blue scrubs sprinted toward her. His eyes sharp with clinical focus, his movements terrifyingly precise. "Give him to me," the doctor commanded, his voice the same drill sergeant tone as before. Olivia looked up at his face. Her breath froze in her chest. It was him, Michael, the man she never believed she would lay eyes on again. The man who remained unaware these two little boys were his flesh and blood. And now, for the second time in 3 days, he held their son's life literally in his hands. The doctor didn't hesitate, didn't blink, didn't spare a single glance for Olivia. His entire focus was locked exclusively on Ethan's limp, choking body. He moved with the desperate speed of someone who had done this life-saving maneuver 100 times. Yet the naked urgency in his eyes suggested that this particular patient mattered more than most. "Crash cart now," he barked, sprinting toward the trauma doors with Ethan held securely in his arms. Olivia instinctively tried to follow, but a nurse cut her off gently. "Ma'am, please, you absolutely have to wait out here. That's my son." Olivia's voice cracked violently, panic shredding what little composure she had left. "He can't breathe. I need to be with him." "I know, sweetie." the nurse said softly, steadying Olivia's shaking shoulders. But the doctor needs all the space he can get to work. He will do everything he can. Everything. Olivia stared helplessly at the trauma room doors as they slammed shut again, her heart sinking, mirroring the finality of the sound. Aiden clung desperately to her leg, his small body trembling violently. "Mommy, is Ethan going to be okay?" he whispered, his voice tiny. "I hope so, baby." Olivia pulled him closer, clutching him as if her arms alone could somehow prevent the world from utterly collapsing. Minutes crawled by, agonizingly slow, then a half hour, then a full 2 hours. Every time footsteps sounded behind the solid trauma doors, Olivia jerked upright, only to see a nurse walk past without a word. Her mind spun wildly into the void. What if he doesn't make it this time? What if that was the last moment I held him, the last thing I said? The doors finally, agonizingly, opened. The doctor stepped through, removing his surgical mask. His blue scrubs were streaked dark with blood, his hair slightly damp with sweat and effort. He quickly scanned the waiting room, searching specifically for her. "Your son is stable," he announced, his voice rough with exhaustion. "He experienced a severe airway obstruction again. We performed an emergency procedure, and he is breathing completely on his own now." Olivia sagged in profound relief, tears instantly flooding her eyes and streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael." He nodded once, then looked down, his gaze settling on Aiden. The tight, dark curls, the familiar warm brown eyes, the small, incredibly familiar face. Something intense flickered across Michael's expression, confusion giving way to undeniable recognition. His gaze shifted immediately to the observation window where Ethan now rested in recovery. Then, slowly he looked back at Olivia. And this time Michael truly saw her. Color immediately drained from his face. His breathing hitched sharply. His eyes widened in absolute, paralyzing disbelief. "Olivia." He whispered her name, barely audible. She swallowed hard, fighting for composure. "Hello, Michael." He stared back and forth between the two boys and her, his voice fracturing with sudden emotion. "Why didn't you tell me? But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started." Michael sank heavily into one of the stiff plastic chairs, as if the crushing weight of the entire world had just landed squarely on his chest. His gloved hands trembled visibly. His jaw was clenched so tightly his muscles corded. He stared blankly at Aiden, then at Olivia, then back again, desperately trying to construct logic out of the impossible, overwhelming truth laid before him. They look exactly like I did at their age," he whispered, the realization almost too much to bear. Aiden, intimidated by the doctor's intensity, hid further behind Olivia's leg, peeking up at him with those devastatingly familiar brown eyes. And Ethan, visible resting through the recovery window, had the same small nose, the same characteristic curls, the same gentle, slightly serious expression Michael remembered from the few existing photos of his own childhood. He dragged a shaky hand down his face, smearing residual sweat. "Olivia, why didn't you tell me?" The words cracked, raw with emotion and breaking open years of aching silence. Olivia sat down slowly, her arm wrapped protectively around Aiden's small shoulders. Her throat tightened with fear and defiance. This was the exact, dreaded moment she had feared since the moment she realized she was pregnant. "I tried," she said quietly, her voice full of exhaustion. Michael shook his head rapidly, disbelief morphing swiftly into something sharper, bordering on accusation. No, you absolutely didn't try. I gave you my number. You could have found a way. I called." Olivia interrupted sharply, her voice suddenly rising in volume and passion. 27 times, Michael. It disconnected every single time. Michael's mouth fell open in realization. I changed my number when I moved to London for the fellowship. I didn't think." "You didn't think?" Olivia's voice cracked like shattering glass, laced with 5 years of resentment. "I was pregnant, alone, terrified out of my mind. I searched for you everywhere I could. No social media presence, No updated contact records. Zero contact point. You vanished without a trace. Michael leaned forward, resting his elbows heavily on his knees, staring blankly at the polished floor as quiet tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. 5 years, he whispered, the sheer magnitude of the loss hitting him. 5 years I didn't know them. 5 years I didn't know they even existed in the world. Olivia's own eyes welled up instantly. I did everything by myself, Michael. Every sleepless, agonizing night, every necessary doctor visit, every scraped knee, every single utility bill. I handled it. I wasn't hiding them from you. I was surviving. A long, suffocating silence stretched between them. Thick, heavy, and profound. Aiden tugged nervously on Olivia's sleeve. Mommy, why is the doctor sad? Michael looked up, his vision blurred by tears, his heart utterly shattered by the revelation. They're my kids, he whispered, his voice trembling with certainty and heartbreak. Aren't they? Olivia nodded, unable to speak, the single gesture confirming his fate. Yes, they're your twins. Michael instantly covered his face with both hands as a silent sob violently escaped him. He had successfully saved his son's life, and in that same miraculous moment, he had discovered everything he had missed, everything he never knew he possessed. The recovery room lights hummed softly above them as Olivia and Michael stood awkwardly on either side of Ethan's bed. His tiny chest rose and fell steadily now, the acute danger finally receding. But the air between his parents still trembled, thick with the heavy density of shock, deep-seated guilt, and 1,000 difficult questions neither of them was prepared to answer yet. Michael gazed down at Ethan as if desperately trying to memorize every slight detail of his face. He looks perfect, he whispered, his voice breaking completely. I missed 5 years of this life. Olivia swallowed hard, keeping her distance. She wasn't ready to offer him comfort. Not even a fraction of it. Not yet. You didn't miss it on purpose, did you? But I did, Michael insisted, guilt darkening his features. I left. I didn't make absolutely sure you could reach me. I didn't think farther than my own ambitious career plan. Aiden tugged gently on the sleeve of Michael's crisp lab coat, breaking the tension. Are you going to help Ethan again if he gets sick? The boy asked, his voice small and uncertain. Michael knelt down instantly in front of him, meeting his eye level. His intense eyes softened considerably. I'm going to help both of you, he promised earnestly, if you'll just let me. Aiden blinked, studying him with unnerving clarity. You talk like Ethan does when he's scared. Michael let out a shaky, painful laugh. Maybe I am scared, Aiden. Olivia crossed her arms over her chest, watching his vulnerability cautiously. What exactly are you asking for, Michael? He stood up slowly, facing her fully. I want to be in their lives, he stated firmly. Not just as the anonymous doctor who saved them in the ER, but as their father. Being a father isn't a weekend visit and a few birthday gifts, Olivia countered. Her voice was steady and cool, but her eyes shimmered with sheer exhaustion. I know that, Michael said. I want to learn what it means. I want to show up consistently. I want to become someone they can completely depend on every single day. Olivia felt her protective walls rapidly rising again. And if you get overwhelmed again? If another job opportunity takes you across the country? If you decide this isn't convenient for your life? I won't, he said firmly, meeting her gaze without flinching. I'm not running again. A beat of charged silence passed between them. Then Ethan stirred restlessly on the bed, opening his eyes, still groggy from the procedure. Michael instinctively reached out and grasped his son's small hand. Hey buddy, you're safe now. Ethan blinked slowly at him, confused by the proximity. You're the doctor, he murmured. Michael swallowed, the lump returning to his throat. Yeah, he whispered, but I want to be more than that to you. No, not again. She whispered in despair, immediately grabbing her son. Ethan blinked awake, his expression instantly terrified. Is Aiden sick like me? We're going to the hospital, Olivia said, trying desperately to steady her voice. She called Michael with shaking, desperate hands. He answered on the first frantic ring. Olivia, what's wrong? It's Aiden. He's having trouble breathing, Michael. I'm taking them to Mercy General. I'll meet you at the entrance. I'm on my way immediately. The drive felt absolutely endless. Every red light was a physical threat. Every minute stretched thin, pulled taut by fear. When Olivia finally pulled up to the ER doors, Michael was already standing outside, still in his scrubs from an overnight shift. He scooped Aiden into his arms the instant she stepped out of the car. "It's okay, buddy. I've got you," he murmured reassuringly, rushing inside with focused determination. 2 agonizing hours later, Michael finally returned to the waiting area where Olivia sat rigidly, gripping Ethan's hand. His grave expression told her everything she needed to know. "What is it?" she whispered, dread filling her mouth with dust. He sat down beside her, his voice quiet but steady with clinical precision. "I ran tests on both of them. Aiden has growths in his throat, exactly like Ethan did." Olivia's breath caught in a sharp gasp. "No, that can't be right." Michael nodded heavily, his eyes weighted down with guilt. "It's genetic. A condition called recurrent respiratory papillomatosis, or RRP, is passed on from a parent. Most likely it came from me." Olivia shook her head violently, hot tears spilling down her cheeks. "All this time, I genuinely thought Ethan's attack was just a terrible accident." Michael swallowed hard, unable to meet her gaze. "They will both need surgeries, potentially every year for a long time. Ongoing treatment. Regular, lifelong monitoring." Ethan squeezed Olivia's hand tighter, sensing the shift in mood. "Mom, am I sick forever?" Olivia couldn't answer because, for the first time, she truly realized this wasn't just a single, isolated emergency. It was the beginning of a lifelong, shared battle that all 3 of them would now face together. The days following Aiden's diagnosis felt like perpetually walking through storm clouds. Olivia barely slept, consumed by anxiety. Michael kept checking in on the twins, hovering like a man genuinely terrified to blink and miss another critical moment. But the real, unavoidable storm arrived one damp evening with a sharp, demanding, imperious knock on Olivia's apartment door. Olivia opened it and instantly froze in place. A tall woman stood in the doorway. She wore an expensive, tailored coat. Her posture was rigidly perfect, and her silver hair was pulled back into a severe, tight knot. Her expression was sharp enough to cut glass. "Are you Olivia Carter?" Her voice held clear accusation even before the words fully formed. "Yes," Olivia replied cautiously, instantly on guard. "I'm Susan Reynolds," the woman stated, her tone cold and final. "Michael's mother. We need to have a serious discussion about what you've done." Before Olivia could utter a single word of defense, Susan Reynolds imperiously breezed inside as if she owned the title to the small space. Her sharp eyes swept disdainfully over the tiny living room, lingering on the threadbare couch and the handful of toys scattered haphazardly across the floor. Then her gaze landed forcefully on Ethan and Aiden, who were sitting quietly watching television. Susan stopped abruptly. Her breath hitched, just for a brief, revealing second, as she took in their small faces. They look exactly like Michael did at their age," she whispered, a touch of wonder entering her voice. But the fleeting moment of softness vanished instantly, replaced by icy fury. She spun back toward Olivia. "You deliberately kept them from him," Susan snapped, her voice low and dangerous. "From us. You robbed my son of 5 entire years of fatherhood." Olivia stiffened immediately. "That is absolutely not true. I tried desperately to find him." "There are always ways to find people," Susan interrupted with utter certainty. "You could have hired help. You could have tried harder than you did. Instead, you waited until one of them nearly died. And now, suddenly, Michael is conveniently back in your life." Aiden's face crumpled with distress. "Why is she yelling at Mommy?" Olivia immediately knelt beside him, shielding him slightly with her body. "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything is okay." But it wasn't. Not with Susan glaring at her with such palpable hatred. Not with the twins watching, distressed and confused. Not with the old, familiar fear rising sharply in Olivia's chest. Suddenly, the apartment door burst open. Michael rushed inside, breathless and clearly agitated. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I am protecting you," Susan snapped back, "from being manipulated by her." "Enough." Michael's voice was instantly sharp, controlled, commanding a halt. "You do not get to speak to Olivia like that. She did nothing wrong." Susan stared at her son, stunned into absolute silence. "I'm your mother," she stammered. "And she is the mother of my children," Michael replied firmly, the weight of the statement hanging heavy in the air. "If you cannot respect her, you need to leave right now." Silence dropped over the small room like a suffocating weight. Susan took a slow step back, a flash of genuine, unexpected hurt flickering briefly in her eyes. Then she turned abruptly and walked out without uttering another word. The door closed softly behind her. Michael looked at Olivia, his face twisted with shame and deep frustration. On his features, "I'm so sorry, Olivia. This wasn't how I wanted any of this to go," Susan choked out, her voice brittle with shame. But as the door closed behind the woman, leaving a sudden, chilling silence, Olivia wasn't sure which terror gripped her tighter. The sting of Susan's desperate accusations or the vast, terrifying uncertainty of what their future would hold now that the truth was exposed. The city slowly softened into spring. In Los Angeles, it was less a dramatic awakening and more a subtle shifting. A warmer, marine layer lifting, the scent of jasmine mingling with exhaust, the lingering presence of sunset stretching well past 7. For Olivia, this season was a physical release, the kind of deep, involuntary breath taken after months spent fighting the suffocating pressure of being trapped underwater. Ethan and Aiden were thriving. Their energy had returned, their laughter robust, and their follow-up appointment with the specialist was steady and reassuring, confirming a complete recovery. And Michael, he had quietly transitioned from a necessary visitor, an urgent responder, into an essential, anchoring presence in their turbulent lives. Their new family rhythm formed organically, without conscious planning, like the slow, steady flow of a river finding its path. Michael would arrive straight from the hospital, the faint smell of antiseptic clinging to his scrubs, kneeling down to check the twins' throats simply out of habit and care. He discovered Aiden's preference for sandwiches cut into elaborate dinosaur shapes, and that Ethan could only drift off if the nightlight was dimmed to the lowest setting, casting barely a shimmer on the ceiling. He sat patiently through difficult math homework sessions, acted out the silly voices in bedtime stories, and consistently appeared even on the afternoons Olivia thought she could manage alone. That elusive quality, trust, which she had once mourned as a casualty of the past, began to return, thread by thread, woven into the fabric of these small, reliable moments. Then came a quiet, fragrant evening in mid-June. The air was thick and balmy, carrying the distant sound of neighbor children playing. After tucking the twins into their respective beds, Olivia and Michael settled onto the worn cushions of the living room couch, separated by barely an inch of space. Behind them, the wall was a chaotic mosaic of Aiden's colorful art projects, each large stick figure holding hands with two slightly smaller ones, unintentionally illustrating a perfect, vibrant family of 4. "You know," Michael said, his voice dropping to a low, reflective tone, "a year ago, I thought I had everything meticulously figured out. My career ladder, my investments, my 5-year goals." Olivia offered a fragile, knowing smile. "And now," he continued, turning his head slightly to face her, his gaze intense, "now I realize the absolute best part of my life was something I never planned for. Something I never even had the wisdom to know I desperately needed." Her heart gave a sudden, quiet leap against her ribs, a sensation both strange and exhilarating. "Olivia, I'm not asking for anything to happen overnight," he said gently, acutely aware of the chasm of time that had separated them. "We've both been significantly hurt. We've both lost time we can never truly recover. But I want to actively build something real and lasting. For them. For us." She lowered her gaze to her hands resting in her lap, studying the lines and creases, before lifting her eyes to meet his. Those eyes, which had once felt like a source of past regret and bitter memory, now felt like the only thing grounding her in the chaotic present. "I honestly never thought I'd say this," she whispered, the admission tasting like freedom. But I'm happy. Really, truly happy. And I am utterly terrified of it. He didn't hesitate. He reached across the small divide and closed his hand over hers. That, he murmured, his thumb brushing her skin softly, means it matters. She didn't pull away this time. She held firm. From the hallway, the lingering, joyful sound of the twins' earlier giggles seemed to still echo faintly in the air. A soft, invisible testament to how incredibly far they had all traveled. We can take this at the slowest pace imaginable, Michael promised. Step by deliberate step. Olivia nodded, inhaling deeply the scent of him. Part man, part medicine, part future. Okay, she whispered back, her voice barely audible. Let's take that step together. Michael's smile bloomed warm and entirely real, erasing years of strain. Then this is our new beginning. And in that moment, sitting beside the man who refused to walk away, Olivia finally allowed herself to truly believe in the possibility of second chances. Not because of abstract concepts like fate, luck, or coincidence, but because the man sitting beside her had dedicated himself to showing up without fail when it mattered most.